Before we start, 2 quick warnings. 1, if you clicked on this, I'm sure you already know, but this is a horror series about haunted children's places. There's a lot of death and a couple quite unsettling descriptions in here. Just a warning in case that's not your thing. 2, this video will not be 100% accurate, partly because there's only like 3 things we know for certain about this franchise, and partly because this will be presented as a narrative, so I had to edit and embellish a little to make things work. If you disagree with something, please feel free to leave a comment. Just don't yell at me, please. I'll be covering everything important, but the core of this, the through line, will be the Afton family. So let me introduce them. William Afton, mechanic, inventor, founder of Afton Robotics, and father of 3. British, yet lives in Utah. Business partners with his pal Henry Emily to create the restaurant Fredbear's Family Diner. Michael Afton, the oldest Afton kid, though actually a teenager. Mike likes to hang out with his friends and taunt his wimpy little brother Evan. Speaking of, Evan Afton loves his Fredbear and Friends plushies. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy are his best friends. Elizabeth Afton, a young girl infatuated with her father's creation, the pretty and shiny Circus Baby animatronic, the face of the soon-to-open Circus Baby's Pizza World. It can make ice cream and dispense balloons from its fingertips, but for some reason, her father won't let her near it. Then came that day in 1983 to give Circus Baby's Pizza World, William's solo project, a test run. Get some kids in there to make sure everything's ready for the grand opening, you know. Elizabeth was there too, and when her father was distracted, she slipped into Baby's empty showroom to finally go and see her. She was wonderful. The girl couldn't imagine why he would keep this from her. But there was a reason. You see, William Afton wasn't exactly the charming, suburban man he seemed to be, and he didn't build the 7-foot-tall Circus Baby just to be an entertainment robot. No, the robot had a secret, special feature. Whenever Baby found herself alone with a single child, her stomach would open up and offer an ice cream cone. But when Elizabeth stepped closer, well, there was screaming for a moment, but only for a moment. No adult or child saw a thing, except one. Watching from afar, Evan Afton saw everything and became deathly afraid of the animatronics. The unfortunate part, aside from the whole dead sister thing, was that Evan had a birthday coming up at Fredbear's Family Diner, a small location with 2 big animatronics, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Not knowing, or perhaps not believing, the reason for his brother's new fear, Michael Afton took full advantage. He began tormenting Evan with jump scares while wearing a Foxy the Pirate mask every day leading up to Evan's party. Then the day came, and the bullying went too far. With his friends to back him up and encourage him, Michael decided to put Evan's head into Fredbear's mouth. They didn't mean any real harm, but the 4 teens laughed as the kid panicked, tears streaming. Tears soaking into, loosening, the spring locks keeping the gaping mouth open. Then, a deafening, mechanical snap. After this incident, the so-called Bite of 83, Fredbear's needed a rebranding. And so, the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was born, making new animatronics out of the characters from the Fredbear and Friends cartoon Evan had loved so much. At first, they tried to keep Fredbear by swapping his purple hat and tie for Freddy's black ones and calling him Golden Freddy. But it didn't work. The animatronic was a bit glitchy. and people still recognized it as Fredbear. Golden Freddy was quickly retired. Henry Emily, the previous co-founder of Fredbear's, made a brand new character for this restaurant too, the security puppet. Its job was to watch over the exit and make sure kids didn't leave the building unattended, an extra security measure after the previous tragedies. But then, a little girl named Charlotte, Charlie, Emily, Henry's own daughter, got locked outside, and when it mattered most, the puppet was useless because somebody trapped it in its box. Stuck out in the dark and pouring night, a certain, unassuming family man crouched down and looked into her eyes. She knew him. It was her dad's friend, William. She explained what had happened as the rain drenched both of them. He chuckled and called her a silly girl. But he didn't help. Instead, he seized the opportunity and did himself what he built that robot to do. It was exhilarating, satisfying. He started planning his return right then as he strolled, grinning, back to his car. The puppet eventually broke out of its box, going out into the rainy night to find its assigned child. Dragging itself along the slick concrete of the back alley, the rain started to fry its electronics one by one. Just before it was completely destroyed, the puppet found Charlie's limp, lifeless body by the trash cans and collapsed on top of her. Mr. Afton did come back, and soon, too. This time, he took 5 of them in broad daylight, using the old yellow rabbit suit to lure his prey to the back. That day quickly became the biggest, most publicized tragedy yet. After a few months, the so-called missing children's incident got Freddys, too, shut down. Because of declining sales, yes. But what really shut them down was sanitation. Parents began to notice stains and smells on the animatronics that disturbed them. You see, the night of the incident, something new happened. Charlie woke up, but not in the alley and not in her body. No, this one was lanky and inky black. Her face was marble white, with red lips and rosy cheeks. Streams of purple, painted tears fell from her eyes down to her wide, permanently grinning mouth. Roaming the pizzeria with slow, halting movements, Charlie found a kid like her. But this one didn't have a new body. Then she found 4 more. Her mind was a bit foggy, and still that of a child, but the idea still came to her. She would give them new life by putting them into the animatronics. Of course, there were 5 children and only 4 robots, but it turned out not to be a problem. One of the kids was already empty inside. The limp Golden Freddy suit twitched a lot that night. They tried to make another Freddy's in 1987 with shiny new robots and even greater security measures. But like clockwork, history repeated itself. There was a bite, Afton returned, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was shut down. The company, Fazbear Entertainment, fell on hard times after this. Their investment in a new, big building with new advanced animatronics was a complete bust. There were only 2 options for the owner, Henry. Let the company go under now, or give it one last try on a tiny budget. It was hardly a choice. He was a single man who recently lost his best friend and only child on the same night. Fazbear Entertainment was all he had left. And so, the third Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was born. A small location with only the bare minimum. The place only had 2 rooms open to the public, the dining area and a tiny room off to the side, Pirate's Cove. They couldn't afford new animatronics, that was for sure, and the shiny so-called toy animatronics were already scrapped. There was only one thing to do: fix up the old, withered, only partially scrapped animatronics from the first Freddys. They twitched and moved sometimes, even when they had no power, especially at night. However, Henry was able to fix them up as nicely as possible, and the restaurant was a mild success. Which is to say, not a complete failure. But then, the rumors started. Rumors about what happened at night. They said that there was a creepy old puppet in the kitchen. They said Freddy would keep it calm by playing his music box. They said there was a vanishing golden bear. They said a night guard never went home. These rumors made people remember the stories and rumors of the past, and they slowly stopped coming. It's not like the place didn't already give them the creeps anyway. And so, the third and final Freddy Fazbear's Pizza fell into disrepair and closed down. It was at this point that William Afton returned to Freddy's again. He may be late, but he always comes back. He had heard rumors surrounding the pathetic new Freddys and found them interesting. Circus Baby had changed after it killed Elizabeth. It took him a while to notice it, but that's why he locked it away, to study it. Fascinatingly, the robot's eye color had changed to match the girl's. Yes, his daughter was in there, but changed somehow, like the murderous purpose of her new body corrupted the girl's childish mind. But this anomaly, there were still questions, still tests to be done. So, Afton drove off to the abandoned Freddy's to see what happens when you kill something twice. Making a lot of noise, he broke into the old storage room and waited eagerly. If the rumors were true, the haunted machines would come to him. Or try, at least. He knew Henry's tricks. He always made a safe room, a place the animatronics were hard-coded to completely ignore, and this was no doubt it. Now he could also see which was stronger, the code or the spirit. As the killer waited, he found an old friend among the broken arcade machines. Spring Bonnie, the yellow rabbit suit. The years and leaky roof weren't kind to it, but he didn't care. Oh, the good times he had had wearing it. How fitting that it'd be so near. Freddy found him first. The thing's glass eyes with the ethereal white pinpricks in the centers searched the room until Mr. Afton almost laughed with delight because he could see the exact moment the mechanical beast spotted him. Its eyes went completely black, save for the pinpricks. Its head twitched as it twisted its body to completely face him. Only then did it charge, letting out a distorted, enraged screech. But when it reached the doorway, it was like it hit a wall. For a moment, Freddy completely shut down. Then, it raised its head, turned, and began to return to the main stage. Afton didn't let it. Smashing the animatronics to pieces with that old, slightly rusted crowbar was exhilarating. But then, he almost felt disappointed. He had smashed Freddy, wrecked Bonnie, crushed Chica, and demolished Foxy. But nothing happened. But it was okay. He had learned. In fact, he felt like a fool for taking the precautions in case he died here. Of course, once you destroy a soul's second host, it must truly be gone. Sweat dripping, he strolled over the sea of shattered parts to get a last look at Spring Bonnie. Or, no, he thought he might take it home. Elizabeth would love to see it. She gets ever so bored trapped down there in storage. He could show her the red stains that never fully came out. But before he could lay a finger on the old rabbit, a chill ran through him, and suddenly he knew he wasn't alone. Eyes wide, pupils small, and half smiling, Afton turned to face his victims. 4 gray, translucent children blocked the exit. They stared at him with dead eyes and blank expressions. He knew their faces by heart, but the 5th child, the one standing in front of the others, oh, he was the most trouble that day. Unlike the others, this little boy's expression was far from blank. He started slowly gliding toward the killer, his killer. William Afton wasn't going to let himself be intimidated by a mere child. But instinctual terror is a powerful thing, and he began to back away, almost tripping over the wet bunny suit. Catching himself, he fled to the other end of the room, heart beating fast, loud. He steadied himself on an arcade machine, breathing heavily. Looking up, he saw that the boy had almost reached him again. Skipping a beat, Afton clambered up to stand on the machine's controls. Almost slipping on the slick plastic, he scrambled over the row of games, leaped off, and did the only thing he could think of. Grabbing the crowbar off the floor, Afton wrenched open the spring-lock suit and got in. Uncontrollable laughter escaped as the fear left him and he felt power. But then came the deafening, mechanical snap. And in the next split second, he remembered the one thing you can't do in a spring-lock suit. He remembered how his son had died. Moisture and a little jostle to set everything off. The restrained metal parts broke loose, all at once pulverizing his body. The killer collapsed against the wall, red pooling on the dirty black and white tile beneath him. The gray little boy stood over Afton. The other kids had left, wandered off somewhere, he didn't know. This wasn't good enough, he wasn't satisfied. He was tired of sharing that golden bear with that other wimpy boy anyway. He never let him do anything fun. He always made the two of them just sit there. But now, sitting around here, it could be good. Only a fraction of what the man deserves, but for now, it's good. Attaching himself to the dead killer in the rabbit suit, the boy trapped Afton's spirit in there with him, doomed to rot in that back room until somebody eventually came to throw them into the scrapyard. Elsewhere, in the abandoned pizzeria's dining area, the 4 children's spirits gathered around a barren party table. Charlie, the restless caretaker, loomed at the head of the table. Turning her painted face, she saw him peeking at them, half visible in the doorway. The final piece of their happiest day, Evan Afton. She beckoned him with her long, 3-fingered hand. Shyly, Evan obeyed. At her command, he nervously took off the golden bear mask he was wearing. When he did, the ethereal object began to grow and morph until a giant, gray birthday cake sat on the table. The astonished children stared at it in wonder as it began to glow. It quickly got brighter and brighter until light filled the room. When it faded, there was only one spirit left. Charlie stood at that table for a long time, savoring the only moment her permanent smile was true. Michael Afton, now a man, is a completely normal and perfectly nice guy. Everybody loves him. He never really talks to his father, because when you grow up with William Afton taking care of you, it becomes clear he's a pretty messed up guy and probably a serial killer. He shrugged it off when William went missing, but when his car turned up at the old Freddys, a seed of curiosity was planted. But it wouldn't grow for a few years. He had more important things to work on, like working with anti-bullying campaigns, trying to forget that he accidentally killed his brother, and therapy. Eventually, though, Michael's curiosity got the better of him, and he visited his father's old house. There, he found a note. It didn't make any sense. It said his long-dead sister was in the storage facility next door. It said she was inside the circus baby animatronic. It said he should free her. It didn't make any sense, but he believed it. And so, Michael went into the facility, saying he was there for the caretaker job. The other robots proved to be nearly deadly challenges, but Circus Baby was different. She helped him through every challenge, preserving him through each night. On the 5th night, though, something happened that didn't make sense. Less sense than what he had already seen down there. Even though the animatronics were still being fixed up and rented out daily, they were being sent to be destroyed. Except not destroyed, just all of their parts, their innards, were removed from their casing using something called the scooper. Then, Baby brought Michael to the scooping room. There, he found the remains of Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora, the ones who have been antagonizing him for the past few nights. Baby herself had just been, too. It was at this point, when Michael was standing in front of the scooper, that Baby revealed their plan. She and the others craved freedom, but they were trapped in the facility. They got to see glimpses of the outside world when they went to whoever rented them for the day, but they always had to go back. They could break out, they had the strength, but there's nowhere for a 7-foot-tall clown robot to go, nowhere for her to hide. But what if they looked different, looked human? They could hide, they could taste freedom. So, they dismantled themselves, took their innards, and formed themselves into a single being, a single skeleton, Ennard. They just needed skin. That's where Michael came in, and he was right where they wanted him. But, as one would imagine, a robot wearing human skin doesn't stay convincing for very long. Ennard abandoned Michael after only a few days, fleeing into a storm drain. Then, against all odds, against all logic, Michael Afton, nothing but a pile of flesh and some bones, got up, eye sockets shining with orbs of pure white. He won't die. He can't die. Now that he knew everything was true, all the rumors, there was work to be done.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Henry Emily, having lost his friend and business partner, his daughter, and the final hope for Fazbear Entertainment, did nothing for about 30 years. Then somebody tracked him down. They were making a horror attraction in some amusement park, and they wanted the rights to make it themed after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the old rumors surrounding the place. Henry wasn't comfortable with this. He never let himself think about it too much, but in the back of his mind, he always knew there was something to the rumors. You can't own Fazbear Entertainment and not notice all of the unsavory details that add up to a horrifying big picture. They offered him a decently large sum of money and a half-joking job offer. He wanted to refuse, but he knew he needed the money and that he didn't have the energy to fight this young man on his vision. It's not like he was doing anything anyway. Reluctantly, Henry agreed to both offers. At first, the job was nothing. He was just a simple night guard making sure nobody sneaks in and that the old equipment doesn't catch fire before the place opens. It was all flashing lights and spooky props. No one would want to come there anyway. But then, while looking for authentic items in one of their dives into the old locations, they found one. A real one. They were so excited by this, in fact, that they seemed to overlook the serial killer's corpse inside the molded, tattered green bunny suit. The rabbit quickly found Henry in the mock-up office, and it knew him. Staring into its eyes and mouth, Henry knew it, too. William Afton and Henry Emily reunited at last. Afton was thrilled, in a way, to see his old friend. Henry was not. He thought fast. He remembered the soundboard they gave to him. It was attached to the cameras. To scare people when they least expected, he was told. Henry thought it was stupid, but now he remembered something else, too. The suit Afton's mangled body's trapped in. All those years ago, he had programmed it to respond to noise, to walk towards the sound of children. For hours, Henry managed to keep his old, reanimated friend wandering the building, limping from room to room, chasing the laughing, phantom child. There were a few close calls. The old, shoddy equipment would fail and have to be rebooted, and Afton would begin lumbering his way back through the small building to Henry's office. That night, he always managed to recover the systems in time, but he wasn't so sure at all he could keep it up for another. Once, on his closest scrape with death, when he was shaking and cursing the ancient equipment, it actually gave him an idea. The best idea he's ever had. But first, he'd have to get out of there alive. This proved not to be a problem. When 6 a.m. came around and the guys arrived to end Henry's shift, Afton stopped. Could he not move in the day? Was he smart enough to play dead so nobody sent him off to some lab? Henry didn't know or care. It wouldn't matter tomorrow. They had specifically told him on the phone that fire was a real risk. Nobody would bat an eye if the place actually did go up in flames. This was Henry's chance to get revenge, and to make sure William Afton could never hurt anybody ever again. The next night, he arrived at 12 sharp. Nobody else was there, just the two of them. Plus a couple gas cans and a pistol. He didn't think he had ever shot it, but all he had to do was ignite the gas. Lugging the heavy cans along, he rushed to his office. It was at the end of a long hall, and right next to it was the emergency exit. The perfect layout. Henry had no idea where Afton was, so he worked frantically. He dropped one can next to the office doorway and poured a thick trail of gas from there to the end of the hall where the beast would come from. He threw the remaining can in the corner and draped some old paper plate decoration over it. to hide it at least a little. Hearing the dreadful sound of heavy, metal feet hitting tile growing louder and louder, Henry's heart skipped a beat before he drew the gun as the adrenaline carried him to the exit. Blood pressure rising, Henry thought about how if he failed, if he missed, he, and no doubt many others, were dead. Then, Afton turned the corner, and he shot. The blinding explosion sent Henry stumbling back and out the exit. After the 2 rapid-fire blasts, all he could hear was the killer letting out an awful noise somewhere between a wheeze and a scream, quickly followed by furious banging on the door. Would the man in his primal fear and rage figure out that he just had to push a little lower to escape? Henry didn't stick around to find out. Vision returning, he wrenched open his car door, leapt inside, and sped home. The next day, Henry ripped into the newspaper. He didn't have to look hard. The story was on the front page. The last word catching his eye, he skipped to the end. Very little was found at the scene. The few items that were salvaged will be sold at public auction. Starting to look closely at the accompanying photo, Henry's heart dropped. In the back, hidden in shadow and hard to make out, was the musty old rabbit suit. It had suffered severe fire damage, but it was intact. Henry didn't have to check the paper the next day to know the rabbit would go missing. And so, he got to work. Lurking in the sewers, Ennard wasn't happy. Elizabeth, or Baby, wasn't the only sentient one in there, and the other 3 were tired of her bossing them around. So, they ejected her, kicked her out, and Funtime Freddy became the new leader, if you want to call it that. Baby, alone and acting like the child she was, told the others she didn't need them. She could do just fine on her own. She could put herself back together. The man rushed from the room as the music started to play and the old puppet began to stir. Soon, Charlie woke up, pushed the lid open, and peered out of her box. What had it been? Days? Weeks? Years? However long, her mind was foggy. Foggier than usual. But there was something interesting in the room. A bear, and it was playing such sweet music. It wasn't Freddy or even the golden one. This one was black with a red hat and tie. The puppet approached the shiny bear and the lovely music. And as she did, it opened up. Weird. But before she could investigate any further, little claws shot from the suit, immediately restraining her. 3-inch thick limbs not nearly strong enough to fight back, the puppet was pulled inside the bear as it began to close back up. Charlie tried to use her power to break out. She could sometimes do strange things if she put her mind to it. But her thoughts were disrupted as the suit pulled its final trick. Her entire body began to get a steady, low shock. It didn't hurt, she didn't feel pain anymore, but it kept her from ever focusing, from using her power. The puppet was captured, and everything was almost in place. Michael grabbed the newspaper from the top of the dumpster. He checked the news every time he possibly could now, after he had missed Father Dearest at Fazbear's Fright. He kicked himself for it, but he couldn't have done anything differently. He didn't even know William was there until after the place had burned down. But that was then. This time, he got lucky. There was an ad encouraging him to become a franchisee for Fazbear Entertainment, which had apparently been revived. A brand new Freddys? There's no way his father would be able to resist that. Michael was ready to hide the fact that he was an empty, long-dead, walking corpse however he possibly could. But he severely overestimated how much Fazbear Entertainment cares about anything except profit. Michael never saw a single human face while building up his restaurant from nothing. He did, however, start to see other faces. Some snuck in through deliveries, and some came to him in his back alley. But after a few nights, they were all there. Afton, Baby, the puppet, Ennard, and, of course, Michael. He didn't even recognize one of them, the black and red bear. But that's because Michael wasn't the one to call everyone there. Then, a very familiar voice began to speak.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch, listen, and be full.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
But Afton did keep the devil waiting for a very, very long time. You see, Cassidy, the little boy who attached his own spirit to Afton's, trapping the killer inside his own corpse, he was still there, and his simmering rage hadn't faded. After the two of them burned, it was impossible to keep either spirit on Earth. But that was okay. The zombie bunny punishment had gotten old. The deranged man even seemed to enjoy it, to a degree. No, Cassidy had something much more permanent in mind. He trapped Afton's spirit in purgatory, constructing a special hell just for him. The killer was forced to fight and die to every animatronic from the very beginning to the very end. Over and over, he tasted death at the hands of the beasts, and the boy was pleased. He would never let Afton leave. Back up on Earth, things were much more pleasant. Henry, at this point very old, was finally at peace. Despite the absolutely atrocious history of the company from the very beginning, Henry was able to sell off Fazbear Entertainment to an interested party for a hefty sum, enough to retire on. The new owners were good, very good. In no time at all, they had the brilliant idea to hire some indie developer to make a bunch of games based on all of the old rumors. But it was all under the table. Cash in on nostalgia, horror fans, and the public's morbid curiosity. The games were a huge success and truly revived Fazbear Entertainment as a relevant corporate entity, though indirectly. But then, to cut off loose ends and collect any future game revenue themselves, Fazbear Entertainment betrayed the indie developer. They said he was crazy. They said he made up those stories and tarnished the brand. So, they hired a small game development studio to make a new game, this one in VR. They told the studio it was to undo the bad PR done by the rogue indie developer. The real problem, though, came when someone at Fazbear Entertainment encouraged the studio to cut some corners, insisted on it. They sent a box of old, salvaged animatronic parts to be scanned, circuit boards and things like that. Certain members of the studio quickly discovered that these circuit boards, scanned to help with pathfinding or whatever the client had told them, were infected. There was malicious code or something. An unstable, glitchy creature manifested in-game. A creature nobody modeled and nobody coded. It wasn't even an animatronic, it looked like a man in a creepy bunny costume. At first, only one person had met it, a playtester. The thing spoke to him, got in his head, manipulated him. And then, eventually, it led to his death. After this incident, development was quickly handed off to a new development studio, to a new playtester. Vanessa, though everyone called her Ness or Vanny, was a young woman with a lot of personality. You'd be hard-pressed to overlook her because of the bright, rainbow streak in her hair. She was a presence that really brightened up the office. Until she started testing the new game. Then she started acting strangely, talking to people who weren't there, and searching odd things like torture, how to induce compliance in human subjects, and help. Then, suddenly, Vanny disappeared. She didn't quit, and she certainly wasn't fired. She was just gone one day. And so was the glitched creature. When somebody came to check on her at her place, she wasn't there. All they found were scraps of fabric everywhere, designs for a rabbit costume laid out on a table, and ads for the new Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex tacked up all over the wall.